Discover the incredible truth behind the shot that changed everything. A heartwarming revelation. Jesse Thompson stood in the golden light of dawn, his cameraless hands itching for the moment he could finally capture the essence of Maple Grove on film. In a town alive with laughter and the scent of ripe harvests, he often borrowed his neighbor's old Polaroid just to catch fleeting moments. Every sunset, every laugh shared across fences, forged small memories that danced in his mind like fireflies in the warm summer air. But it was more than just a passion. It was a dream ignited by the hope of a brighter future, one framed by the lens of a camera he longed to call his own. Life wasn't easy. His family's farm struggled under the weight of bills as thick as the dust on the old wooden counters. Mornings began with hard work plowing, sowing, picking. Jesse wore his calluses like badges, testifying to his relentless dedication. He often wondered if his dreams could withstand the grind of daily life, the responsibilities that pulled at him like heavy ropes. But each snap in his mind grew more vivid, brighter with the thought of the upcoming Harvest Festival. The talent show promised a scholarship to a prestigious art school, a golden ticket to the future he craved. Yet, tension twisted tighter at home, echoes of his parents' arguments reminding him of the stakes. "You need to focus on the farm," his mother urged, while his father nodded in agreement, brow furrowed with worry. "You can't waste time on fantasies like photography," they said. But Jesse's dreams filled the silence where hope seemed to break. It wasn't just a wish. It was his heartbeat, pumping life into every inch of his being. The conflicting expectations suffocated him, yet paradoxically fueled his fire as the festival approached. He stood poised in the balance between hopeful aspiration and daunting reality. Blake Simmons, his childhood friend turned rivalry, seemed to glide through life without a care. A slick smile and shiny new camera, Blake embodied every advantage Jesse lacked. The whispers from the community pinched his heart. They favored images of wealth over the beauty of struggle he could capture. It gnawed at him, a bitter reminder that dreams seemed to have price tags attached. That fateful day, as townsfolk gathered beneath twinkling lights, Jesse found himself behind the crowd. He snapped pages of their lives, the laughter, the clinking of mugs, and the warm embrace of community spirit. His heart soared as he captured the essence of togetherness, a testament to resilience. Then the announcement came. Just as Blake stood to claim victory, a gasp swept through the crowd. Someone had uncovered the truth of Blake's deceptive tactics. The whispers of cheating had found their way to the surface. Jesse's heart raced, loyalty clawed at his insides, and integrity challenged him to stand tall. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The hum of anticipation buzzed in the air as people turned to Jesse, their eyes wide with expectation. He held his breath, teetering on the edge of revelation. Would he choose to expose Blake's deceit or silence his voice in fear of the consequences? The weight of his decision felt heavier than any plowed field or crop harvested autumn, the very foundation of his dream quaking beneath him. As he stood there, tears pooling in the corners of his eyes, Jesse realized that this moment tested more than just a teenage dream. It defined who he was and the values he carried in his heart. The crowd waited, the fate of his ambition hanging in the balance. Would he step out of the shadows for what was right? Hope tangled in the tension as he approached the microphone. The whole community watching, breath held. What came next could change everything. Jesse clutched the microphone, his palms slick with sweat. Each heartbeat thundered in his chest like a drum, drowning out the sounds of the crowd. Faces stared back at him, some full of expectation, others marred with disappointment. As he opened his mouth to speak, words tangled in his throat. He glanced at Blake, who stood to the side, a mask of confidence barely concealing the worry in his eyes. Jesse remembered their shared childhood, the bikes they rode, the dreams they forged in the Golden Meadows. Could he really destroy that? A blast of wind rustled the surrounding tents, sending a shiver down Jesse's spine. But then he thought of his own dreams, the dreams of everyone at the festival who had worked tirelessly, who had bled sweat for their crops and lived through hard winters. He envisioned the coming days if he didn't say anything. Would he remain silent, watching someone who didn't deserve it bask in glory? The festival was about honesty, about celebrating the true spirit of their community. Jesse straightened his shoulders and breathed deeply. "Excuse me," his voice trembled but grew steady. "I need to share something." It's important. Gasps echoed through the crowd, and the energy shifted. Even Blake's eyes widened in disbelief, as if questioning the direction of the storm brewing inside the boy he so often brushed aside. Jesse paused, his heart racing. "I've watched as Blake, someone I've known for so long, has claimed every moment of this celebration as his own. But this journey hasn't been without deceit." The words felt like stones, heavy yet liberating. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jesse could see concerned faces exchanging glances, friends unsure of who to side with. But he held firm. "I don't speak this to tarnish his name, but to reclaim the dignity of what this festival stands for." He inhaled another breath of courage, determination glimmering in his eyes. "We all deserve to be celebrated for our hard work, and that includes those who have toiled in the shadows, unnoticed." Blake's face paled, the bright smile fading as disbelief morphed into panic. The crowd's chatter turned electric, words ricocheting off the festival stalls. Jesse felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He was laying bare not just Blake's truth but a piece of himself too. Life isn't about who has the flashiest camera or the loudest voice. It's about connection, the stories that weave us together as a community. Jesse continued, the desperation in his tones sparking genuine energy among the crowd. "I want to celebrate the truth. True artistry comes from capturing real moments, real lives, not from shortcuts." For a moment silence stretched. The world felt suspended, anticipation thick in the air. Then someone in the crowd shouted, "Tell it, Jesse." Others joined, voices rising in unity, empathy warming their hearts. Jesse's spirits lifted. Together they were powerful. He glanced back at Blake, whose bravado was deflating under the weight of their community's collective gaze. Jesse felt a flicker of pity but pushed it aside. This moment wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who had ever been silenced, who had watched dreams die under heavy burdens. As murmurs of agreement grew from the crowd, Jesse realized he had done what he feared most. The truth leapt from his heart, infusing life into the festival with each word. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but they were no longer from sorrow. They were from a profound sense of liberation. Just as the energy began to shift toward hope and solidarity, an unexpected voice cut through the tension. "You think this will solve anything?" It was Blake, now stepping forward boldly, mask shattered. Anger danced in his eyes, but resentment also flickered behind them, a glimmer of something fragile. People turned again, the atmosphere electric with uncertainty. Would Blake fight back, or would he concede? The path ahead seemed murky, and Jesse's heart raced with anticipation. In that moment, one question lingered in the air. What would happen to their friendship and to their dreams after all had been unveiled? Blake took a step closer, the tension around them thickening. The air crackled like a summer storm about to break. Jesse could feel the stares of the crowd growing heavy, anticipation crackling through the knotted energy. It was a moment that felt like it could easily tilt either way toward redemption or heartbreak. "Jesse." Blake's voice shook, loaded with a mix of hurt and challenge. "You think you can just stand there and paint me as the villain? You don't know everything. You don't know what it's like to have to make hard choices." His eyes darted to the crowd, searching their faces for solidarity. "They don't know either." Jesse felt his stomach twist. There was a truth in Blake's words. He had always taken the high road, tried to be the good friend, the one who believed in his talent. But was it too much to ask that Blake push him to be more honest, to be more genuine? Jesse shook his head, fighting against the emotional tide that threatened to pull him under. "You're right," Jesse replied, voice wavering but steadying as he spoke. "I don't know everything, But I do know that being honest means acknowledging our flaws. You wanted all the glory without admitting the struggles behind it. We all face challenges, Blake. But you can't keep pretending you're the only one who matters out here. The crowd murmured again, emotions rippling across faces marked by indecision. Jesse watched as a young girl in the front row clasped her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide in fear and anticipation. This wasn't just about him and Blake anymore. This was about the community, their community. Why do you think I've done it, Jesse? Blake's voice softened suddenly, regret flickering across his features. I thought if I stood out, maybe I wouldn't be forgotten like so many before me. I didn't want to blend in to disappear. Jesse's heart ached at Blake's vulnerability. They had both worked so hard, yet they followed different paths. Jesse had pursued honesty while Blake had chased recognition. Both were trying to live their dreams. But now they were standing at a crossroads that could either tear them apart or unify them. I never wanted to forget you, Jesse spoke, emotion bubbling to the surface. I never wanted any of this. I wanted us to be together, to uplift each other. We fought so hard growing up, and it's so easy to lose sight of what matters. Blake took a deep breath, visibly shaken. And what matters? He asked softly, almost pleading. Is it my art? Is it this festival? It's us, Jesse said, looking straight into Blake's eyes, willing him to see the truth. It's about all of us standing here today, recognizing our failures and our successes. It's about authenticity. Slowly, the tension began to shift. Jesse could see faces softening, the anger and resentment dissipating like fog in the sun. Would Blake accept this? Would the friendship they built over years withstand this trial? For the first time, Blake's expression betrayed a sliver of uncertainty. Maybe I didn't need to stand alone, Blake whispered, almost to himself. The crowd waited, breath held in unity as if they were all a part of this moment, this revelation. Jesse surged forward, a sense of urgency in his voice. Blake, we can rebuild this. We can be stronger together. The bonds we forged as kids don't have to break now. But before Blake could respond, someone in the back shouted, "Don't let him off easy." The voice cut through the fragile moment, dragging the tension back to the surface. Jesse turned, face pale, but the realization was hardening in his heart. This day wasn't just a climax, it was a turning point. What would Blake choose? Would he face the truth and step into the light, or would he retreat back into the shadows he had carved out for himself? Jesse's palms began to sweat again, fear mingling without hope. The crowd roared with renewed energy, yet doubt lingered heavy in the air. They both stood at the precipice of change together, but so very alone. What could happen next? Would their friendship survive, or would they spiral into a rivalry that could never be? Bridged, the shout echoed in Jesse's mind, drowning out the worried murmurs of the crowd. He glanced over at Blake, whose expression had hardened again, the uncertainty overtaken by defiance. It was as if the walls were rising back up, brick by brick, around the vulnerability they'd just begun to share. The crowd buzzed like a hive, excitement mingling with suspicion. What do you want from me, Jesse? Blake's voice picked up intensity, cutting through the noise. You think this is about friendship? This isn't one of your Hollywood endings. The heat of his frustration matched the sharpness in his glare. No, it's not, Jesse countered, desperate to keep the ball rolling. But it can be the start of something real. We've got to stop letting the past define us. You know that. The faces in the front row shifted, reflecting the tumult in their hearts. Some were shaking their heads, others nodding tentatively, as if they'd been given a glimpse of what could be. Blake stepped back, hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders slumping slightly. You think I don't want that? You think I haven't tried? But the more I share, the more it feels like I'm giving in. Like I lose everything. His voice quivered, a thin veneer of bravado cracking under the weight of truth. Jesse stepped closer, searching for the right words, anything to bridge the gap that was widening again. It's not about losing. It's about embracing who we are. All of us. You don't have to bear it alone. Why can't you see that? The wind rustled the leaves overhead, swaying like the crowd as they held their breath. Jesse glanced at the girl in the front row again. Her small hands still gripped tightly, the tension practically palpable. He knew they needed this moment, an anchor amid the rising chaos. "Blake, we've fought too hard." Jesse's voice softened, almost pleading. "When we were kids, we faced the world together. We didn't let fear push us apart. Let us not do that now. Together, we're stronger." Something flickered in Blake's gaze. A flicker of recognition? Regret? Jesse couldn't tell. "I don't," Blake began, but the words stumbled, caught in the knot tied in his throat. The crowd remained still, eyes locked on the two of them, the silence stretching. They could feel the stakes, the possibility of a unifying message or the crumbling of a friendship that once meant everything. "Just listen for a second," Jesse continued, urgency creeping into his tone. "Every single person out there has felt lost, confused, even afraid. But they're here because they believe in something greater. We're here because we've fought for something. And if we can show them that we can stand together, think of what we could build." A hesitation hung in the air, as if the crowd had become a living entity, weighing the truth of Jesse's words against their own experiences. Jesse felt hope blooming within him. Maybe, just maybe, Blake would see that allowing themselves to be vulnerable could spark something beautiful. Yet, Blake's expression twisted with uncertainty. "What if I can't go back, Jesse? What if I disappoint everyone?" The flicker of fear in his eyes was undeniable. "You won't disappoint them if you're honest." "You won't disappoint me," Jesse replied, placing a hand gently on Blake's shoulder. "Let us not walk this path alone anymore. Let us redefine what it means to be up there together." But the echo of the shout still lingered ominously, coursing through the crowd like a wave crashing against rocks. A second voice from the back called out again, "Don't be weak." The crowd shifted, tension reinstating itself like a shroud heavy with judgment and expectation. Jesse felt his heart race. Could he really pull Blake back from the edge? Was there still a way out? The pain in his chest swelled, driving him to make one last desperate push. "Blake, it's time to choose. Will you stand with me? Or will you let the fear of failure tear us apart?" And with that, Jesse held his breath, waiting for the answer that would change everything for better or for worse. The crowd remained hushed, collective anticipation hanging thick in the air as Blake met his gaze, uncertainty battling with a flicker of hope. What would be his choice? Blake's expression shifted in a heartbeat, the internal war evident across his face. His brows knitted together as he searched Jesse's eyes, looking for something: purpose, strength, conviction. It was as if he was peering into a mirror and reflecting on everything he had been, everything he wanted to be, and everything he feared he might never achieve. The crowd held its breath. Jesse's body tensed, every muscle eager, waiting. He could sense Blake's hesitation and wanted to pull him back from the brink. Blake's hand trembled slightly in his pocket, as if trying to grasp hold of something solid in the swirling chaos around them. And then, a single bead of sweat dripped down Jesse's temple. "Why does it have to be so hard?" Blake finally whispered, the vulnerability of those 4 words staggering. "Why does it feel like I have to choose between who I am and who I want to be?" Jesse felt that sharp pang in his chest twist deeper. He understood the struggle all too well, the feeling of being stuck between 2 worlds, too afraid to leap into the unknown. "Blake, it's hard because it's worth it," he said, voice trembling with urgency. "But it's also exciting. Don't you want to see what we can create? Together? We've fought our whole lives, why let fear decide our path now?" The boy in the front row stepped up, his face creased with concern. "I used to be afraid too," he said, courage crackling in his voice. "But I found strength in sharing my story. You can too." Slowly, other voices around him began to echo similar sentiments, murmuring their support. "Yeah. Don't be afraid," one called out. "We're here for you." Blake's eyes wandered over the crowd, his posture shifting as he saw their faces, familiar and warm. He felt lost in their shadows for so long, but now they were gathering, ready to lift him up. "What if I fail?" Blake's voice shook again, but there was a slight spark of determination buried beneath the fear now. "And what if you don't?" Jesse countered, his heart pounding in resonance with the crowd's mood. "Failure is simply part of moving forward. If you fail, you learn. If you try, you grow. We're walking this together. Look around." Blake inhaled deeply, exhaling slowly as the weight in his chest gradually began to lighten. Jesse noticed the fear in his eyes shift, transforming into something else, hope. Perhaps? The shadows that had loomed for so long started to dissipate. Finally, Blake dropped his gaze to meet Jesse's head-on. "Okay," he said, vulnerability washing over his features. "Okay, I'll try. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to stand with you." Cheers erupted from the crowd as if a dam had burst, releasing pent-up tension into the atmosphere. Jesse's heart soared, warmth flooding through every part of him. This was the moment everything they had endured, the trials, the separations, were leading to this pivotal breakthrough. But even as joy flickered between them, Jesse could feel the lingering echo of doubt still hovering at the edges of Blake's enthusiastic response. The chant of "You can do it" became a chorus that blended with Blake's still whispered fears, as the crowd erupted into cheers. A new voice broke through with a sharp clarity. "You think this moment will fix everything? You're just setting yourselves up for disappointment." A chill swept through Jesse, cutting through the warmth of the crowd as support. He turned, scanning for the source of the harsh words, and found a figure standing apart from the rest, arms crossed defiantly. "Who are you?" Jesse shouted back, voice steady despite the surge of anxiety in his chest. "Someone who has seen this all before," the figure replied, lips curling into a sneer. "You can't just pray away the issues, kids. You're gonna crash and burn." Jesse felt tension gather again, thickening the air like fog. Would they be able to reach Blake in time? And could this moment truly be a turning point? Or would it all come crashing down? As anticipation rose again, the question hung like the last note of a haunting melody. How could they prove to Blake that this moment mattered? What path lay ahead? And was the promise of change strong enough to withstand the voices that sought to tear them apart? Blake's heart raced, his mind a whirlwind as simmering uncertainty soured the electrifying joy of the crowd. All around him, voices of encouragement echoed like a heartbeat, but the figure's sharp words sliced through the air, leaving a chill in their wake. "Don't listen to them, Blake," Jesse urged, stepping closer, his eyes wide with determination. "They don't know your story. They don't know what you're capable of." But Blake didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared off toward that figure standing alone, arms crossed, a wall of defiance meant to keep hope at bay. The crowd's vibrant cheerings felt distant now, muffled by doubt. "What if they're right?" he whispered, worry tightening around him like a noose. "What if it's all just words?" Jesse felt a twist in his gut, a surge of protectiveness washing over him. "Words matter," he declared passionately, his voice cutting through the gloom. "This is about action, Blake. Action trumps doubt. Look at everyone here. They believe in you." The crowd's response was instantaneous, a wave of shouts and claps, each sound merging into a rising tide of support. Blake's gaze darted back and forth, each familiar face a testament to shared struggles and triumphs. "That can't change the past," the figure retorted, pushing forward, their voice thick with cynicism. "You're still carrying your baggage. You think one pep talk can make you whole? Look at you, exposed, vulnerable. You're setting yourself up for hurt." Blake clenched his fists in frustration. He didn't want to feel attacked in a moment meant for healing. But Jesse wasn't backing down. "You're wrong," he shouted fiercely. "We all carry our stories. In fact, they're what make us human. And being vulnerable is what brings us closer together. You may see weakness, but we see strength." The figure faltered for just a heartbeat, uncertainty creeping in. Blake took a step forward, the resolute energy igniting something inside him. "I know I have fears," he confessed, his voice steady, "but that doesn't mean they own me. I choose to confront them because I'm tired of running." The crowd nodded, voices blending into an enthusiastic roar, all eyes focused on Blake. Would that voice in the crowd finally be the breaking point for him? As Blake squared his shoulders, A sense of calm washed over him. Each cheer felt like wings lifting him higher, and Jesse's unwavering gaze anchored him against the storm of doubt. Then silence fell. The figures stood rigid, their defiance wavering. All it took was one small crack. What if you still fail? Blake drew a deep breath, allowing the question to settle. Then I will learn, and I'll keep trying. That's what growing is all about. I've hidden for too long. No more. The crowd surged with raw energy, an explosion of support that enveloped Blake like a warm blanket, reassurance coursing through him. Slowly but surely, he could feel the heavy chains of fear begin to crack. Was it possible? Could he stand freely on his own ground? But just then, a loud crash erupted from behind the figure, reverberating through the tense atmosphere. Eyes darted to see what had caused the noise, hearts leaping, and suddenly the beautiful moment of support began to fracture. Was the fight for Blake's truth just beginning? Or would this new chaos send him back into the shadows he so desperately wanted to escape? As uncertainty bloomed again, Jesse felt a weight settle heavily in his chest. What would be the next challenge they faced together? The loud crash sent a ripple of panic through the crowd, a stark reminder that the world outside Blake's moment of clarity was still chaotic and unpredictable. Faces shifted from encouragement to confusion, worry spreading like wildfire. Blake swung his head around, heart pounding. What had broken? A few feet away, a toppled podium lay on the ground, the remnants of what had once stood as a place for voices to be heard. Blake's breath caught in his throat. That podium was a symbol, a part of the space where people had gathered to support one another, a sanctuary of sorts. What just happened? Jesse shouted, scanning the crowd, eyes darting. There was an air of uncertainty unfurling, ready to consume the hope Blake had fought hard to grasp. But he couldn't let that happen. Stay with me, Blake urged, his voice louder than he felt. He turned back to the crowd, gathering himself. We can't let this moment turn into fear. With those words, he felt flames of determination rekindle in his chest. The crowd gradually began to focus again. They watched him, their faces mixing fear with anticipation, and he recognized a flicker of hope, a reflection of his own internal struggle. Together, we're strong. Let us show them, he shouted, surprised by his own fierce conviction. He took a step closer to Jesse, the bond between them radiating strength. This is just noise. What matters is how we respond. Jesse nodded, visibly grounding himself in Blake's words. The figure who had cast doubt earlier watched, expression shifting, no longer the wall of disdain but rather curious. The crowd's spirited yells began to bounce back, louder than before. They needed direction, needed courage. And Blake was ready. Let us pick ourselves back up, he called. Let us not just stand here in silence. Let us remember why we're here, because no matter how hard it gets, we lift each other up. Blake felt the gravity of every word. He could sense it shifting the energy around him. As if in response to his words, a cheer erupted, louder this time, filled with resilience. It felt like a jolt, sending energy through the crowd. But the figure paused for a moment longer, mouth tightening. Your rallying cries changed the truth that's buried deep. You're too scared to face it, Blake. They pressed, a desperate challenge hanging in the air. Blake squared his shoulders and took a deep breath. I'm ready, he said, every syllable dripping with conviction. I'll face whatever's buried there, because I know I'm not alone anymore. The crowd erupted in approval, fueled by his authenticity. The figure's expression wavered again, cracks appearing in their armor of skepticism. Blake could see it, the change was growing. Everything and everyone that I've lost, all the mistakes I've made, they're part of my story. But so is my willingness to grow. Blake felt Jesse's hand squeeze his shoulder, firm and reassuring. Yet just as the crowd seemed to regain its footing, the shadows of doubt crept back in. There was a shift in the crowd's energy. Whispers of fear began to hover, the echo of the unknown flashing before their eyes. Blake realized he had only just begun. This wasn't over. The crunch of raised voices and a scrapping tumult of disbelief rippled through his heart. Was he ready to take on not just the outside world, but also whatever lay within? And as the being of doubt stared at him, eyes full of challenge, Blake could feel another storm brewing, ready to break. What would it reveal? Would he have the fortitude required to face it down? Blake stood at the precipice of something monumental. The crowd's energy felt electric, but uncertainty hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick and suffocating. He could see the doubts bubbling in the eyes around him. People were starting to shift, some stepping back, questioning whether they believed in his words or if they were just as lost as the world outside. "Listen to me," Blake called, voice steadying, reaching through the noise. "We've faced storms before. This one, it's no different. We can't be paralyzed by fear when we're this close to something real." He felt Jesse step beside him, their shoulders brushing. Jesse's presence was grounding. In a world that often felt relentless, this partnership was a reminder that they were all in this together. The crowd, still half wary, began to nod, as if Blake's words were sinking into the cracks left by the crashing podium. A few voices shouted support, tentative but growing. But all the while, the figure watched, masked in the gathering shadows, their previously curdled expression piercing like a relentless wind. "You think courage can shield you from what you refuse to see?" they challenged, voice sharp as glass. "You think shouting will drown out the truths you fear?" Blake's heart raced. There was a challenge in the air that he couldn't ignore. What was he really afraid of? Was it the voices in his head whispering of failure? Or was it the haunting memories of the past pulling him back? But more importantly, he didn't want to lose this momentum. No, he shouted back. "Courage isn't armor against truth. It's the light that lets us see it. My past may be filled with darkness, but I'm ready to embrace it." His words were no longer just a rallying cry. They were a commitment. Glancing around, he caught a glimpse of faces illuminated by newfound determination. A middle-aged woman nodded, tears filling her eyes as she gripped her son's hand tightly. An elderly man, usually stoic, cracked the faintest smile. They were with him, their collective heartbeat mingling with his, creating a chorus of hope. "Together we can unearth those truths," Blake continued, each word more bold than the last. "We can face the fears, confront our losses. Each scar tells a story. Are we willing to share those stories?" A roar erupted from the crowd. Not just a reaction but a visceral response, a growing wave of solidarity taking shape. Jesse threw his fist in the air, caught up in the swell. Blake's own spirit soared. But then, as the fears began to fade, another thought loomed, unrelenting and heavy. What lay in the shadows beyond the immediate chaos? What truths had he buried deep that might shatter this moment of clarity? Just as the crowd began to settle into this newfound understanding, a bolt of lightning split the darkened sky outside, casting a sharp light through the gathering clouds. The crowd instinctively recoiled, fear flaring anew. Blake raised his arms, fighting to reclaim the moment. "It's okay," he called, heart pounding louder now. "Fear is just a choice. We can choose to face it together." As the distant rumble of thunder rolled through the air like a drumbeat, Blake locked eyes with the figure in the shadows. "Show me what I fear," he breathed, almost a whisper. But instead of backing down, the figure stepped forward, one single step that sent ripples through the crowd. Blake felt his stomach drop. Every eye was drawn to this new confrontation. There was power in that moment. There was promise, danger, and above all a challenge waiting to unfold. What lay behind the figure's enigmatic gaze? Would they reveal a truth that could shatter everything Blake had built in these fleeting moments? The figure's movement pierced through the tension like a knife, and Blake's breath caught in his throat. The crowd's murmurs faded into an anxious hush, everyone holding their breath, poised at the edge of something monumental. Who was this shadow? What did they know that could undermine the fragile unity Blake had stirred? The masked figure stepped fully into the light, revealing a face that was both familiar and foreign. It was a face that Blake had seen in photographs as a child, a face that haunted his memories, a face he thought was long gone. "Do you recognize me, Blake?" The figure spoke, the voice smooth yet laced with an underlying steel. I was once your anchor, your guide in the tempest. Blake staggered back, his heart racing. He could feel the air grow thick around him, each heartbeat echoing with disbelief. No, it can't be, he muttered, struggling to form the words. You're gone. The audience shifted uneasily. Jesse's hand tightened on Blake's shoulder, grounding him amidst the chaos. Blake felt a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, confusion, hope, and finally, the smallest ember of courage. I never truly left you, the figure his mother replied, shedding the mask and revealing the contours of time etched across her face. I've been waiting for this moment, Blake, to help you confront what you've buried deep. As the words sunk in, memories crashed over him, each one a wave of pain and longing. The nights spent longing for her comfort, the silence that filled the void she had left behind. Yet, there was also a flicker of warmth, a spark of unequivocal love. The crowd vibrated with energy, some gasping, others murmuring softly. Is that really her? Someone whispered. Fear has kept you in chains, she continued, her voice steady. You fought valiantly to break free, but the truth doesn't come from shouting into the void. Comes from the heart. It was never about running. It's about accepting. Blake searched her eyes, desperately wanting to believe, for answers. The listener inside him stirred, the need to know their shared truths pressing against the barrier he'd built over the years. What do you want from me? He struggled to keep his voice steady as it quivered with vulnerability. I want you to understand that shedding fear doesn't mean forgetting. It means embracing the fears and losses we carry, she responded, her gaze piercing through him like light through a storm. There's power in vulnerability, and it's time you shared your stories, our stories. The murmurs rippled through the crowd again, this time with uncertainty mingled with intrigue. They were restless, the atmosphere charged with potential. Blake felt a well of emotion rising inside him, the potency of her words nudging him to confront the past. If I share my truth, what will it mean? He asked, almost to himself. It will mean healing. Not just for you, but for all of us, she replied softly, a small smile touching her lips. You're not alone, Blake. Look around you. He turned to the faces in the crowd, familiar, yet unfamiliar. Each one held their own stories, their own struggles. In that moment, Blake glimpsed the immense tapestry of humanity interwoven by loss and resilience. With a heavy heart, Blake stood at the intersection of fear and freedom. Would he take that leap into vulnerability as his anchor urged him to? As the clouds rolled ominously overhead and the thunder rumbled again, Blake sensed that the answers he sought were less about confrontation and more about connection. Together, Blake whispered, his voice barely audible yet filled with fervor, we can turn our pain into power. But the deeper question crept in, lurking at the edges of the moment. Had he gathered enough courage to face the truth of his own heart? The rain began to fall, steady and relentless, as the crowd remained spellbound. What would Blake reveal in the storm that was brewing inside him? The rain fell like a gentle reminder from the heavens, each drop echoing the weight of unsaid words, charged with possibility. Blake took a deep breath, feeling the coolness against his skin, the dampness igniting a resolve from within. His mother's words lingered, swirling in his heart, urging him toward the truth held captive in his soul. Around him, the crowd stood as a unified force, friends, neighbors, strangers, all holding an unspoken bond through shared experiences. And then he remembered. This festival wasn't merely a competition. It was a celebration of each life woven into the fabric of Maple Grove. It was about authenticity, about standing together in vulnerability, something he had long since forgotten. Locking eyes with Jesse, Blake felt an endless current of support flow between them. You've always had my back, he whispered, almost to himself. I didn't know how to ask for help, but now I think I do. Jesse nodded, an unwavering affirmation sparking a flame in Blake's heart. I've hid behind masks for too long, Blake confessed, the words tasting bitter yet freeing. I was so afraid of disappointing everyone, of falling short, so I chased shadows instead of living in the light. I let fear drive my actions, and it cost me everything. He felt the warmth of the crowd amplify around him. They were listening, their breaths aligning with his, hearts open and eager to connect. Facing the truth, one T erased the past, but it could strengthen my future, he continued, his voice growing steadier. My mother taught me that every story carries the power of healing. We all have struggles, losses, things we fight to bury. But today, standing here with all of you, I realize I don't need to shoulder that alone. The murmurs transformed into a soft chorus of encouragement. Blake saw his neighbors nod, eyes shimmering with understanding. He swallowed hard, determination surging inside him. If I step into the light, maybe I can help others do the same. This is where we get to redefine our stories. We get to celebrate our scars. Yeah. Someone shouted from the crowd, followed by a ripple of support that cascaded through them. Share it, Blake. This isn't just about me, he added, heart racing with sincerity. This is about recognizing all the truths we carry. The fear of failure, the fear of being abandoned, all these shadows can no longer hold us prisoner. A pulse of energy ignited throughout the gathering, each word striking a chord. The figure that had challenged him earlier hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their face as the crowd rallied. You all want to believe in fairy tales, the voice interjected, but it trembled now, wavering beneath the weight of Blake's sincerity. You think simply sharing your stories erases pain. Maybe it doesn't erase pain, Blake replied, his firm resolve pushing back against the shadows of doubt. But it allows us to feel and heal together. The stories we share connect us. They become a tapestry of resilience, a living reminder that we aren't alone. A wave of murmured agreement swept through the crowd, blending with the patter of rain beginning to soften. Blake could feel their energy shifting, growing into a movement. He could see tears glistening. Some were born from sadness, others from shared laughter and recognition. With each heartbeat, Blake felt anchored, grounded in the truth of who he was going to become. I'm ready to share my story, he said, voice breaking through the cacophony. I was afraid of the judgment, of the whispers behind my back. But the truth is, we're all just trying to navigate our own storms. Finding our voices empowers us. The crowd erupted into applause, a roaring wave of acceptance crashing around him, drowning out the dissent and doubt. Their cheers echoed like a shared heartbeat, lifting Blake and wrapping him in a cocoon of unity. Together we create strength, he added, feeling the warmth blanket over him. Empathy creates transformation. As the rain danced around them, cleansing the air of lingering doubt, he stepped forward into the light, reaching for the community that once felt so distant. Blake took a deep breath, letting the memories of joy and heartache wash over him like the rain. I remember the summers spent with my mother in this very town, capturing moments through her lens. It was here where I learned the beauty of storytelling, the art of connection. This admissions flowed, no longer hurried but natural, as if each statement was a brushstroke painting his story against the vast canvas that filled the night. He talked about laughter, and growing up, the trepidations, the thrills, and the painful realizations that had kept him afloat. He shared the joy of stepping into authenticity, the transformation blooming in bitterness. My journey is our journey, a shared experience, Blake concluded, voice rising with the fervor of the moment. And together, we can redefine what it means to dream big, breaking boundaries and nurturing the authenticity that lives within us. Let us lift each other, tell our stories, and build a stronger community. As the embraces drew closer from neighbors once lost in shadows, tears mixed with the rain. For the first time, Blake felt weightless, discovering the release of burdens he had carried far too long. The masked figure began to smile softly, their demeanor shifting as they found light seated within the acknowledgement of Blake's revelation. What was once an emblem of skepticism now radiated warmth. Jesse, standing steadfast beside him, smiled brightly, embodying the essence of their bond. This is just the beginning, Blake. Today we built more than just dreams. We built a path forward. The roar of applause from the festival echoed in harmony with the rain, a chorus of unwavering hope that seemed to rinse away every doubt, every fear that had plagued them. Blake turned, looking over the sea of faces, joy pooled within him as he realized that they were all part of this remarkable transformation. They held a power within to rise against the storms, built on the foundations of truth, community, and understanding. And as the first rays of sun peeked through the dissipating clouds, illuminating Maple Grove in golden light, Blake knew. This was the moment when everything truly changed. This was where their journey began anew. If you felt the spirit of this transformation, you need to subscribe now to see what comes next in our evolving stories. This is the moment to show your support. Every like fuels the sparks of inspiration in our community. Don't wait not even one more second. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this incredible journey. And share this with 5 friends who need to see how we can overcome. Your support matters.